The Mercury Grand Marquis is not a pretty car. I will be the first to admit that. It is the color of a bruise that is starting to heal, a faded, dusty beige that Ford called Arizona Gold back in 2004. It has a dent in the rear bumper from when I backed into a bollard at the hardware store in 2009, and the clear coat on the hood is peeling like sunburned skin. But when I turn the key, the engine does not cough. It does not whine. It catches with a low, throaty rumble that you can feel in your chest. That is the sound of a 4.6-liter V8 engine, the last of the great American interceptors. It is the same engine they put in police cars and taxis because it was built to run forever if you treated it right. I treat it right. I was under the hood, wiping grease off the dipstick with a rag, when my phone rang. I knew it was my son, Mark, because I have a specific ringtone for him. It is the sound of a siren. I assigned it 3 years ago as a joke, but lately it feels less like humor and more like a warning system. "Hello, Mark," I said, tucking the phone between my shoulder and my ear so I could keep working. "I am just finishing up the oil change. Did you know your father put synthetic in this thing 20 years ago before it was standard? Smart man." "Mom, please," Mark said. He sounded breathless. Mark always sounds breathless, like he is running a race that no one else is participating in. "I do not have time for car talk. Are you still coming today?" "Of course," I said. "It is a celebration, isn't it? Regional sales manager. That is a big title, Mark. Your father would have been proud." "Yeah. Well, that is why I called," Mark said. He didn't say thank you. He didn't ask how I was. He went straight to the logistics. "Listen, Mom, we have a lot of people coming. Important people. My boss, Mr. Reynolds, is going to be here. And the president of the Homeowners Association, Linda. She is particular." "Okay," I said, wiping my hands on my jeans. "I made my potato salad. The one with the dill. I know it is your favorite." "Right, the salad," Mark said, his voice tight. "That is great. But listen, about the car." I paused. I looked at the Mercury. It was gleaming in the afternoon sun. If you ignored the rust on the quarter panel, to me, it looked like reliability. It looked like 40 years of no car payments. "What about the car?" I asked. "Do not park in the driveway," Mark said. "Actually, do not even park on the street in front of the house. The HOA is cracking down on older vehicles. They say it brings down property values." "Brings down property values?" I repeated. "Mark, it is a car, not a burning trash heap. It is street legal." "It is an eyesore, Mom," he snapped. "Look, just park on Elm Street. It is 2 blocks over. There is a path that cuts through the woods. You can walk." "Walk?" I looked at the thermometer on my garage wall. It was 89 degrees. The humidity in Michigan in July is thick enough to chew. "Mark, I am 70 years old. You want me to walk 3 blocks, carrying 5 pounds of potato salad in this heat, because you are ashamed of my car?" "I am not ashamed," he lied. "I am just managing optics. Mr. Reynolds drives a Bentley, Mom. Linda drives a G-Wagon. If they see that rust bucket in the driveway, it sends the wrong message. It says I come from. Well, it says I am not part of their world." "I see," I said. My voice was calm, but inside, I felt a familiar coldness settling in. It was the same feeling I used to get when a supplier tried to sell me substandard steel at premium prices. "So, my car embarrasses you. It is just for one night," Mark pleaded. "Please, Mom, do not make this about you. Just do this for me. If I make a good impression tonight, Reynolds might talk about a vice president role next year. This is my future." Fine, I said. Elm Street. 2 blocks over. Thank you. He exhaled. And Mom? Maybe wear something. Not flannel? Jessica says the dress code is summer chic. I will wear clean clothes, Mark. I said, that is the best I can do. I hung up. I looked at the Mercury. I ran my hand over the peeling paint. He does not deserve you, I whispered to the dashboard. I went inside to shower. I put on my best pair of slacks, navy blue, ironed crisp, and a white linen blouse. I put on my sensible walking shoes because, apparently, I was hiking to this party. I drove to Mark's subdivision. It is called the Estates at Whispering Pines, which is ironic because there are no pines, only saplings that look like they are struggling to survive the aggressive landscaping. The houses are massive. They have turrets and pillars that support nothing. They are built close together, as if they are huddled in fear of the open space. I drove past Mark's house. His driveway was already full. There was a silver Mercedes, a black BMW, and a white Land Rover. They looked like appliances, shiny, expensive, and identical. I turned onto Elm Street. It was the street behind the subdivision, the one where the houses were older, smaller, more honest. I parked the Mercury under a shade tree. I locked the doors. I picked up the heavy bowl of potato salad. The walk was miserable. The humidity wrapped around me like a wet blanket. By the time I reached the path through the woods, my blouse was sticking to my back. My shoes were dusty. I emerged onto Mark's street. I could hear the party before I saw it. The sound of polite laughter, the clink of glass, the low thump of bass from a sound system that cost more than my first house. I walked up the driveway. I felt like the help. I felt like a vendor delivering a package, not a mother coming to celebrate her son. Mark was standing by the front door, holding a glass of wine. He was wearing a polo shirt that fit too tightly across his chest and loafers with no socks. When he saw me, his smile faltered. He looked quickly to his left and right, checking to see if anyone was watching. "You made it," he said, stepping forward to intercept me before I could reach the main group. He lowered his voice. "You flushed." "I walked 3 blocks in 90-degree heat, Mark," I said. "I am sweating. That is what human bodies do," he grimaced. "Here, give me that." He took the potato salad. He held it away from his body like it was radioactive. "Why is it in a plastic bowl? Jessica has serving platters. It keeps it fresh," I said. "It is Tupperware. It is practical. It looks cheap," he muttered. "I will go put this in the kitchen, in the back. You, go get a drink, but maybe stay on the patio? The AC inside is acting up." He was lying. I could hear the hum of the compressor from here. He just didn't want me inside, cluttering up his aesthetic. "Happy promotion, Mark," I said to his retreating back. He didn't answer. I walked to the patio. It was crowded. The guests were exactly as I expected: men in pastel shorts talking about golf scores, women in sundresses talking about kitchen renovations. No one looked at me. I was invisible. An old woman in sensible shoes standing near the potted plant. I saw my grandson, Toby, sitting on the retaining wall by the pool. He looked bored. He was playing a game on his phone. "Hello, Toby," I said. He looked up. His face lit up. It was the only genuine smile I had seen all day. "Grandma!" He jumped down. "Did you bring the Mercury? I wanted to show you. I read about the firing order on the Vate. I think I know why it idles rough when it is cold." "I did bring it," I said, patting his shoulder. "But your father made me park it on Elm Street. He thinks it scares the neighbors." Toby rolled his eyes. "Dad thinks everything is scary if it isn't leased. I hate his car. It has no soul. It drives like a computer." "It is a computer, Toby," I said. "That is the problem. Can we go look at the Mercury later?" he asked. I want to see the engine again. Maybe, I said. Just then, the sliding glass door opened. Mark stepped out, followed by a tall man with silver hair and a suit jacket over a t-shirt. The uniform of a man who wants you to know he is rich but relaxed. That had to be Mr. Reynolds. Mark was laughing at something Reynolds said. It was a loud, forced laugh. The kind of laugh you pay for. Oh, absolutely, sir, Mark said. Innovation is key. You have to trim the fat. Get rid of the legacy systems. They stopped near the beverage station. Mark poured Reynolds a drink. Speaking of legacy systems, Reynolds said, gesturing vaguely toward the yard. Is that your mother over there? The one by the fern? Mark froze. He looked at me. I met his eyes. I expected him to wave. I expected him to say, yes, that is my mom, the woman who worked 40 years in automotive supply chain and taught me how to read a spreadsheet. Instead, Mark gave a tight, apologetic smile. Yeah, Mark said. That is Helen. She is. Well, she is very old school. You know that generation. They hold on to things forever. Charming, Reynolds said, taking a sip of his drink. Does she live nearby? In Troy, Mark said. In a little bungalow. We try to help her out. You know, we offered to buy her a new car. Something safe, something modern. But she refuses. She drives this ancient Mercury. It is embarrassing, honestly. It breaks down all the time. That was a lie. My car has never broken down. Not once. She claims she likes fixing it. Mark continued, warming up to his audience. Reynolds looked bored, so Mark tried harder. She counts her pennies. I think she reuses paper towels. It is quaint, really. But you know, we worry. If she saved a little more during her working years, maybe she could afford something from this decade. But, well, supply chain didn't pay much back then, I guess. I stood very still. I felt Toby stiffen beside me. Grandma, that's not true, he whispered. You have money. You bought me my laptop. Hush, Toby, I said. I watched Mark. He was looking at Reynolds, desperate for approval, using me as a prop to show how far he had climbed. He was painting a picture of a poor, stubborn old woman so that he could look like the benevolent, successful son who had risen above his humble origins. He called me poor. He called me embarrassing. He said I should have saved my pennies. I looked at Mark's wrist. He was wearing a Rolex Submariner. I knew for a fact he put it on a credit card last month because I saw the statement on his kitchen counter when I babysat. I looked at his patio furniture. It was rent to own. I looked at his eyes. They were empty, and something inside me snapped, not with a bang, but with the quiet, precise click of a torque wrench hitting its limit. I had spent my life being understated. I drove a Mercury because I liked it. I lived in a bungalow because it was easy to clean. I wore flannel because it was warm, but I was not poor. I retired as a senior vice president of global procurement. I had stock options from the 80s that had split and split and split again. I had investments that Mark couldn't even spell. I could buy this entire subdivision and turn it into a parking lot if I wanted to, but I didn't want a parking lot. I wanted to teach my son a lesson about value. Grandma? Toby asked. Are you okay? You look scary. I am fine, Toby, I said. I just realized I have a headache. I walked over to Mark. I interrupted him mid-sentence. Mark, I said. He jumped. Mom! I didn't see you there. I have a headache, I said. The heat. I am going to go home. Relief washed over his face. He didn't even try to hide it. Oh, that is too bad. But you should rest. At your age, heat stroke is serious. Yes, I said, my age. Do you want me to walk you to your car? He asked, glancing at Reynolds, hoping I would say no. No, I said. I will manage. Enjoy your party. Say goodbye to Jessica for me. What about the potato salad? He asked. Do you want the container back? Keep it, I said. Or toss it. I hate clutter. I turned around. I walked back down the driveway. I walked past the Mercedes and the Land Rover. I walked back into the woods. But I didn't go to the Mercury. I stopped on the path. I took out my phone. I opened the Uber app. I selected Uber Black. I typed in the destination Motor City Imports. It was Saturday. The dealership closed at 6. It was 5:15. I had 45 minutes to change the narrative. I sat on a stump and waited for the black SUV to arrive. I looked at my sensible shoes. No more sensible, I whispered. The car arrived. I got in. Where to? The driver asked. To the Porsche dealership, I said. And please, step on it. I have a car to pick up. The back of the Uber Black was quiet. It smelled of vanilla air freshener and leather conditioner, a stark contrast to the humidity I had just walked through. I watched the trees blur past the window. We were passing the golf course now, the one where Mark paid $20,000 a year for a membership he used 3 times a summer. I thought about his face when he hid my potato salad. The shame in his eyes. He looked at me and saw a liability. He saw a rust bucket. He saw an embarrassment. He judged the machinery by the paint job. That is the mistake of an amateur. A true mechanic knows that you can polish a turd until it gleams, but if the transmission is slipping, you are not going anywhere. Mark was all polish and slipping gears. If you know someone like Mark, someone who judges a book by its cover or a mother by her sedan, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. Let's prove them wrong together. The driver turned onto the strip where the high-end dealerships sat like temples of consumption. We passed the Lexus lot, the BMW lot, the Mercedes lot, all of them full of white and gray SUVs, the uniform of the suburban middle manager. Here we are, ma'am, the driver said, pulling up to the glass facade of Motor City Imports. I stepped out. The dealership was cool and quiet. It did not smell like exhaust. It smelled of espresso and money. The floor was polished white tile that reflected the overhead lights like a mirror. A young man in a sharp suit looked up from the reception desk. He saw my flannel shirt, my dusty shoes, my frizzy hair. He opened his mouth, likely to ask if I was looking for the parts department or perhaps the bathroom. But before he could speak, the door to the manager's office swung open. Mr. Henderson walked out. He is a man who knows his business. He knows that in Detroit, the people with the real money usually look like they just finished shift work at the plant. Mrs. Foster, he boomed, his arms wide. He bypassed the young salesman and walked straight to me. I was not expecting you until Monday. This is a delight. I had a change of plans, Mr. Henderson, I said. Is she ready? She was detailed this morning, he said, beaming. We were just letting the ceramic coating cure. Come to the delivery bay. He led me past a row of sedans that cost more than Mark's house. We walked to the back, to a private room separated by glass walls. In the center of the room sat a shape covered in a silver silk sheet. My heart did a little double clutch in my chest. I know you ordered the carmine red, Henderson said, his hand resting on the fabric. Take it off, I said. He pulled the sheet back. It flowed over the curves like water, revealing the machine underneath. The Porsche 911 Turbo S. It was low. It was wide. The red paint looked wet, deep enough to drown in. The yellow calipers of the ceramic composite brakes popped against the black center lock wheels. It looked like a predator crouching in the grass. I walked around it. I didn't touch it yet. You have to respect the engineering before you handle it. 3.8-liter, twin-turbo flat six, I whispered, reciting the specs I had memorized months ago. 640 horsepower, 0 to 60 in 2.6 seconds. All-wheel drive. It is a rocket ship. Henderson agreed. And with the Sport Chrono package you added, it will tear the asphalt off the road. I looked at the rear of the car. At the wide hips, the active aero wing. It was functional beauty. Every line, every vent, every curve was there for a reason. It was there to manage airflow, to create downforce, to feed oxygen to the hungry turbos in the back. It was the opposite of Mark's life. Mark's life was decorative pillars and fake shutters. This car was pure, brutal purpose. The paperwork is ready, Henderson said. We just need to run the financing. Unless. No financing, I said. I reached into my purse. I pulled out the envelope I had brought from the bank yesterday, just in case. I took out the cashier's check. I handed it to him. He looked at the amount. $230,000. He didn't blink. He just smiled. Cash is king, Mrs. Foster. It is, I said. Ownership is king. My son leases his life, Mr. Henderson. He rents his lifestyle from the bank at 4% interest. He thinks that makes him rich. I looked at the check in his hand. Mark thinks success is a lease payment you can't afford to miss. I know success is a title with your name on it and 0 liens. If you are tired of people like Mark pretending to be rich while drowning in debt, like this video, let's show them what real ownership looks like. Let's get the keys, I said. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in the driver's seat. It wrapped around me. The 18-way sport seats were firm, holding my ribs, my hips. The smell of the truffle brown leather was intoxicating. The tachometer sat dead center in the dash, analog and honest, waiting to wake up. Mr. Henderson stood by the open window. Now, remember, Helen, the launch control is aggressive. Keep the wheel straight if you floor it. I drove prototypes on the frozen lakes in the Upper Peninsula in 1985. Mr. Henderson, I said, putting my sunglasses on. I know how to handle oversteer. I turned the key switch to the left of the steering wheel tradition. The engine barked to life. It wasn't the low rumble of my Mercury. This was a sharper, angrier sound. A mechanical snarl that settled into a high-strung idle. The car vibrated around me. Alive, impatient, I put it in drive. I tapped the throttle. The revs jumped and fell instantly. No lag. I pulled out of the bay. I pulled out of the lot. I turned onto the main road. The traffic was light. I pressed the accelerator halfway down. The PDK transmission snapped down 2 gears faster than a heartbeat. The turbos spooled a high-pitched whistle of compressed air, and then the car surged forward. It didn't accelerate. It teleported. My head pinned back against the headrest. The world blurred. I was doing 60 in the blink of an eye. I laughed. I actually laughed out loud, a sound I hadn't made since my husband died. Okay, I said to the dashboard. Okay. I came to the stoplight. I checked the navigation screen. It was set to home. I canceled it. I typed in a new destination. The Estates at Whispering Pines. I wasn't going home. I looked at the digital clock. It was 6 o'clock. The party would be in full swing. Mark would be on his 3rd glass of wine, telling his boss about his vision for the region. He would be relaxed. He would be thinking that the embarrassment was gone, that his mother and her rusty car were safely hidden away in her bungalow. He thought he had erased me. I gripped the leather steering wheel. I forgot my Tupperware, I said aloud. I switched the drive mode dial on the steering wheel to Sport Pluses. The exhaust note deepened, becoming raucous. The suspension stiffened. The active front splitter extended. The car was ready for war, and so was I. The Estates at Whispering Pines looked different through the windshield of a $230,000 sports car. When I had walked through here 2 hours ago, sweating in my flannel shirt, the houses had looked imposing, looming over me like fortresses of judgment. Now, viewing them over the sloping red hood of the Porsche, They looked fragile. They looked like stage sets made of plywood and stucco, ready to be blown over by the exhaust wake of a real machine. I turned onto Mark Street. I didn't speed. Speeding is for teenagers who have something to prove. I kept the car in second gear, keeping the revs high, around 4,000 RPM. The engine note wasn't a scream. It was a growl. It was a deep, resonant bass frequency that vibrated the windows of the parked cars I passed. It announced presence. It announced that a predator had entered the ecosystem of leased sedans and golden retrievers. I saw the party ahead. It had spilled out onto the front lawn now. The sun was setting, casting long, golden shadows across the manicured grass. Mark was standing on the front steps, holding a microphone. He actually had a microphone and a portable speaker system, making a speech. I slowed down. I let the car creep forward. The ceramic brakes squeaked faintly. A high-performance sound that only car people understand means expensive stopping power. Mark stopped talking mid-sentence. He heard it. Everyone heard it. The conversation on the lawn died. Heads turned. Drinks paused halfway to mouths. The sound of the flat six engine bounced off the brick facades of the houses, amplifying the menace. I saw Mark shield his eyes against the setting sun. He was squinting at the car. He didn't recognize it. Of course he didn't. He expected a rusted Mercury. He saw a carmine red missile. His face changed instantly. The annoyance he had worn all evening vanished, replaced by a look of hungry, desperate sycophancy. He took a step down from the porch. He adjusted his collar. He assumed, naturally, that this must be someone important. Maybe the CEO of the company had decided to drop by. Maybe a celebrity was lost. Mark is the kind of man who measures respect by the price tag on your bumper. He smiles at horsepower, but sneers at history. If you have ever been treated like dirt by someone who only values you when they think you are rich, hit that subscribe button right now. Let's remind them that character is the only currency that matters. I turned the wheel, pulling the Porsche directly into the driveway. I didn't park to the side. I didn't park on the street. I pulled right up the center. Blocking in his white Land Rover, my front bumper inches from his rear license plate. I put the transmission in neutral. I pulled the parking brake switch. But I didn't kill the engine. I let it idle. The cooling fans kicked on, a jet turbine whoosh that mixed with the mechanical clatter of the engine. Mark was practically running down the driveway now. He had dropped the microphone. He was wiping his hands on his pants, a nervous, eager grin plastered on his face. He looked like a child running toward an ice cream truck, if the ice cream truck cost $250,000. Jessica was right behind him, smoothing her dress, her eyes wide with greed. Even Mr. Reynolds, the boss with the Bentley, had stepped onto the lawn. His drink lowered, looking at the car with genuine appreciation. They surrounded the vehicle. Unbelievable, I heard Mark say through the glass. Look at those calipers. That's a Turbo S. Who do we know who drives a Turbo S? He approached the driver's side. He tapped gently on the glass, bending down, his face full of obsequious charm. He was ready to network. He was ready to invite this stranger into his home and offer them the best wine, the wine he hadn't offered his own mother. I waited a beat. I took a breath of the new car leather smell. Then I pressed the button to lower the window. The glass slid down silently. Mark was already talking before he saw me. Wow, I have to say, that is a magnificent machine. I'm Mark Foster, and I just want to... He stopped. The air left his lungs in a sharp, audible wheeze. He stared. He blinked. He stared again. I lowered my sunglasses slowly, peering over the rim. "Hello, Mark," I said. The silence that followed was absolute. It was heavier than the silence in the library. It was the silence of a worldview shattering into a million pieces. Mark's mouth opened and closed like a fish on a dock. Helen? Jessica shrieked from behind him. She pushed forward, looking into the cockpit. What? What are you doing? Whose car is this? Did you steal it? Steal it? I laughed. Jessica, I am a 70-year-old woman with an artificial hip. Do you think I carjacked someone at a stoplight? Then, did you rent it? Mark stammered. He was gripping the doorframe, his knuckles white. Is this a prank? Did Toby put you up to this? I don't rent. Mark, I said coldly, you know that. Renting is throwing money away. I believe that was the lecture you gave me about my apartment in 1999. Then? Whose is it? It is mine, I said. I picked up the registration from the passenger seat. I had left it there on purpose and held it up. Helen Marie Foster. Paid in full. Cashier's check. Mr. Henderson at the dealership sends his regards, by the way. He says I have excellent taste. Mark looked at the registration. He looked at the car. He looked at me. His brain was trying to reconcile the image of his flannel-wearing, coupon-clipping mother with the woman sitting in a cockpit that looked like it belonged in a fighter jet. But, he whispered, you're broke. You drive a Mercury. You reuse paper towels. I drive a Mercury because it is a reliable vehicle with a cast-iron block, I said, my voice carrying clearly over the idling engine. The guests were creeping closer now, listening. Mr. Reynolds was standing 10 feet away, watching with a fascinating expression on his face. I was a senior vice president of supply chain for 20 years. Did you think I spent all that money on bingo? You have millions? Jessica whispered. The horror in her voice was palpable. She wasn't horrified that she had mistreated me. She was horrified that she had mistreated a millionaire. I have enough, I said. Enough that I don't need to hide my mother's car 2 streets over to impress neighbors who don't like me anyway. Mark flinched. The guests were murmuring now, covering her mouth to hide a smile. Mom, please. Mark hissed, lowering his voice. Don't do this here. Not in front of Reynolds. Do what? I asked innocently. I just came back from my potato salad container. You said it was cheap and embarrassing. I didn't want it cluttering up your aesthetic. Forget the salad, Mark said. He looked at the car again, and the greed overtook the shame. It was a physical transformation. His eyes dilated. He reached out and touched the roofline. Mom, this is a 911 Turbo S. Do you know what this can do? I know exactly what it can do, I said. 640 horsepower, 2.6 seconds to 60, top speed of 205 miles per hour. Let me drive it, Mark said. It wasn't a request. It was a demand masked as enthusiasm. Mom! Come on! Let me take it around the block. Just once. I need to feel the launch. Reynolds is watching. If I roll up in this... He reached for the door handle. He just doesn't get it. He thinks the car is the magic. He thinks if he sits in the seat, he becomes the king. But the car is just metal. The power comes from earning it. If you are sick of entitled people demanding things they haven't worked for, smash that like button. Let's show them the door. I hit the lock button on the armrest. Click. Mark pulled on the handle. It didn't budge. Mom? He said, confused. Unlock it. Let me show you how to really drive this thing. I looked at him. I looked at his soft hands. Hands that had never changed an alternator. Hands that had never rebuilt a carburetor. Hands that signed lease agreements and credit card slips. I cannot let you do that, Mark, I said. Why not? I'm your son. I'm a car guy. You are not a car guy, I corrected. You are a brand guy. There is a difference. A car guy respects the machine. You just want the badge. Mom, don't be like this. No, I said. And there is another reason. What? Insurance, I said. My insurance covers other cars? He argued. Not this car, I said. I spoke to my broker this morning. To drive this vehicle, the policy requires a driver with a clean record and a credit score above 750. The crowd went silent. Mark went red. A deep, beetroot red that started at his neck and consumed his face. He knew his credit score. I knew his credit score because I had seen the rejection letters from the bank on his counter. It was barely 600, dragged down by late payments on the boat, the furniture, and the trips to Cabo. You, he choked. You represent a liability, Mark, I said, slipping back into my boardroom voice. And, as a risk assessor, I cannot authorize you to operate this asset. You simply cannot afford the risk, Jessica gasped. Mr. Reynolds actually chuckled, a loud, barking laugh that cut through the tension like a knife. She's got you there, Foster, Reynolds called out. Know your limits. Mark looked at his boss. He looked at his neighbors. He looked at me. He looked small. He looked like a man who had been wearing a costume of success, and I had just turned on the lights. You did this on purpose, he whispered. You came back to humiliate me. I came back, I said, because you told me I was embarrassing you. I wanted to make sure I corrected the record. I am not the embarrassment, Mark. The fact that you need to hide your own mother to feel big, that is the embarrassment. I looked past him. I saw Toby standing on the lawn, his phone out, filming the whole thing. He was grinning. Toby! I called out. Toby ran over, pushing past his stunned father. Grandma, that is sick. Is that the sport exhaust? I smiled. It is. Listen, I am going to the spa for the weekend. I booked a suite at the Grand Hotel on Mackinac Island. But next weekend, I will pick you up. We will go to the track. I will teach you how to hit the apex of a corner. For real. For real, I said. But you have to bring your own helmet. Deal! I looked back at Mark one last time. He was still holding the door handle of a car he would never drive. Goodbye, Mark, I said. Do not worry about the potato salad. I will buy a new bowl. I can afford it. I rolled up the window. I put the car in Sport Plus mode. I checked the mirrors. The driveway was clear behind me. I pressed the accelerator. I didn't launch it hard. I didn't want to leave tire marks on his driveway. That would be rude, but I gave it enough throttle to wake the turbos. The engine roared. A sudden, violent bark of sound that made Jessica jump back and spill her wine. I reversed out of the driveway, the backup camera guiding me perfectly. I spun the wheel, shifting into first. As I pulled away, I watched in the rearview mirror. Mark was standing alone in the center of his driveway, surrounded by his leased luxury cars, watching the taillights of his inheritance disappear down the street. I tapped the exhaust button, opening the baffles fully. The Porsche screamed down Elm Street, a blur of carmine red against the beige monotony of the suburbs. I turned up the radio. Classic rock, Bob Seger. I wasn't an old woman in a rust bucket anymore. I was Helen Foster, and I had a long drive ahead of me.